We blame our media and our politicians for the many failures that brought us to this existential crisis for our nation. Nearing the installation into the most powerful office on earth, a cancerously corrupt man whose corruption is already metastasized to our organs of state. So it's up to us as citizens to take action. And here we are today, wise-eyed open, fearful that government of the people, by the people, for the people, could indeed quickly vanish from this world we share. Our first speaker today is Kaitlin Byrd, also known as Gotham Girl Blue. Kaitlin has been commenting about American politics on Twitter since 2016 and published essays since 2018. A second-generation New Yorker, Kaitlin got into local politics doing door-to-door canvassing at the age of 3. In 2016, she began speaking out on social media about past, present, and future of the United States with a unique blend of bluntness, humor, and clarity that has informed the pages of the Huffington Post, Bustle, the Boston Globe, The Cut, and Betches Media. She's a monthly columnist for Dame Magazine and weekly co-host of the Betches podcast. She has a big internet presence as, one word, GothamGirlBlue.com. So would you please give a warm welcome to Kaitlin Byrd. And I apologize if I went on too long.
Hi, I'm Kaitlin Byrd, and you probably don't see people like me in many places because I'm just a regular person. I'm a person who's overlooked by the political establishment in this country because I live in a city, I don't have a college degree, I rent, and I vote in every election. And because I wasn't imagined within the confines of the Constitution when it was written, when those men cooped up in Philadelphia to debate and draft what this country would become, they never imagined that the protections, freedoms, rules, and rights they would enshrine into fundamental law would encompass this loudmouth queer black lady. So the reason I stand here as a citizen, peaceably petitioning my government for action, is because of the 14th Amendment. This is the amendment that granted citizenship to formerly enslaved people and enshrined equality under the law. This is the amendment that solved the broken moral math of the 3/5 compromise. This is the amendment that put the answer for reconciliation and reconstruction of a broken nation into the hands of the only people who could be trusted with it. The 14th Amendment was more than an addition, it was a revolution. An entire renaissance of the American ideal, a claim to freedom that has made our progress possible. But the words on the page could only do so much. Despite the promises of citizenship and equality, enslaved people, my people, were denied and deprived of their basic rights. Despite the new equation for representation, the complexion of power didn't change for long. And as soon as the ramifications of rebellion became clear, the push for forgiveness fell right behind. So while I can be here because of the text of the 14th Amendment, the reason I am here is because the thousands of people over 150 years have done everything in their power to make it real. But the 14th Amendment isn't a triumph. It's an unfinished tragedy. For a long time, those people and their trying, they failed. Terrorists attacked the recently liberated. The corrupt stuffed ballot boxes and consolidated power. The courts, including the Supreme Court, struck down their calls for equality. Also, this country would never include people like me. Although my predecessors would fail and fail and fail time and again to get justice, they never stopped trying. They persisted despite the blood and fire, the neglect and passion, the rulings from a corrupt court that said their citizenship, hard fought and hard earned, was separate and unequal. These were heavy setbacks, real challenges that could not be easily overcome. But because they did not give up, when they started to win, they won big. So as we are faced with a betrayal of the Constitution in our own time, we have to ask ourselves, will we try? On January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump raised his hand and swore an oath that every president has made to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. On January 6, 2021, he broke that oath. Almost 4 years ago, to the day, Donald Trump betrayed our republic for his own selfish whims, to seize power he had not been granted. First, by subterfuge, railroading state legislators, attacking election officials, pressuring his own vice president to betray the Constitution. And when he was denied by all of them, he decided he would do it by force. There is no question or confusion about this. The world was a witness to Trump's treachery that day. The mob smashing its way into the Capitol, members of Congress and their staffers running for their lives, the bent and broken bodies of Capitol Police as they formed the thin line of defense, and international leaders looking on in concern and horror, implicitly asking America, are you okay? We were not. We are not. Because after this open attack on the rule of law, on the Constitution, on the Republic itself, Donald Trump got away with it. The House of Representatives wrote up an article of impeachment and passed it. But the evenly split Senate, still under the control of Senator Mitch McConnell, took its time on the charges, and 43 senators would ultimately be too cowardly to convict. The Department of Justice hemmed and hawed and scuffed and stalled, resulting in too little, too late. And when voters, we the people, tried to get him thrown off the ballot in multiple states, the Supreme Court usurped us by undermining the 14th Amendment, as they have done so many times before. So freed from this responsibility, Donald Trump ran a campaign of lies, distractions, and disinformation, and convinced enough voters in enough places that he was fit for power. But we know better. He doesn't have that authority yet, but his transition has shown us what he will be, and it can be summed up in one word: monarchy. This is a man compelled to take for himself first and foremost, not to serve but to rule. He has broken numerous ethics laws during his transition, promised to staff our top government agencies with sycophants and toadies, has threatened journalists and political opponents with imprisonment in violation of the First Amendment, openly offers pardons to convicted criminals, seditious criminals who did violence on January 6th, and has taken aim at birthright citizenship because he thinks he can define who is and is not a citizen, again undermining the 14th Amendment. And in response to this dictator in waiting, this dissolution of our Constitution, appeasement, complacency, impotence. There are no more options, they say. Wrap it up. Time to go. Last one out of American democracy. Turn off the lights. But I remember my legacy. I remember who brought me here. I remember what they faced and what they overcame, and I say it's not over. I say we try. Because Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is unambiguous. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously There we go. Nope. All right. That one works. All right. As a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Because the article of impeachment drafted by the House of Representatives, it said this: the Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Further, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits any person engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States from holding office under the United States. And those 57 senators who voted to convict, not enough for removal under Article 1, Section 3, but plenty enough for the 14th Amendment, Section 3. Coming up? You can hear me? You guys? Oh, there we go. And those 57 senators who voted to convict, not enough for removal under Article 1, Section 3, but plenty enough for 14th Amendment, Section 3. And the Department of Justice never got a conviction? Well, fortunately, Section 3 enforcement doesn't require that. The Supreme Court tries to protect their seditious sugar daddy. Then maybe they should be more careful with their words, because they said no limits are on congressional authority for Section 3. And to me, no limits sounds a lot like can't be argued in front of the court. And while I must and always will respect the decisions of my fellow voters, whether Donald Trump is fit to serve this country after breaking his oath is not up to us. It is up to 2/3 of Congress. People who are vested with the power of our government, people who represent our needs, people who know what it means to take an ironclad oath to the Constitution and keep it. So that is what we are asking them to do. There are people who will scoff at this, a political establishment complicit in their own fecklessness, who will say we're sore losers or hypocrites or just as bad as Donald Trump. But this is not the same. This is the text of the Constitution, without wild theories or novel interpretations. This is a process that has been applied to thousands of people across multiple elections, with legislation successful and unsuccessful that can be accessed by anyone with the time and patience to scour the congressional record. This isn't new or outrageous. And when it is taken up in Congress, there will be no mob threatening their lives to force them to comply. There will just be lawmakers upholding their sworn duty. The people who act like January 6th was normal, that it was acceptable, that the sin of its violence and violation can be swept away by getting 49% of the vote, those are the people who are wrong. Even with all of the lies and distortions, a vast majority of the country thinks that what happened on January 6, 2021 was wrong. They think it was a violation of our democracy. They agree that people who did violence that day should be locked up. And they will not object if we ask for the people who incited them to be held to account. So that's what it means to believe in the Constitution, and that's what most of us do. So Democrats in Congress can keep their oaths by demanding that Donald Trump atone for breaking his. Refuse to certify his electoral votes until an amnesty act is drafted and passed by 2/3 of both houses. And to get Democratic votes, the margin that they need, this amnesty must meet Democratic terms. First, that Donald Trump, in a written statement and recorded address, acknowledged that he lost the 2020 election, acknowledged that his actions to undermine, question, and overturn the result were unconstitutional, and apologized for the harm his actions caused. Finally, to take an additional oath to swear that he will never attack the constitutional order again. For a normal man in normal times, none of this would be much to ask. But Donald Trump has taken us to new and unprecedented places, convinced us through the sheer scale of his corruption that those of us asking for decency, for kindness, for fairness, for the rules to be followed are the ones who are incorrect. That an apology for the greatest domestic attack on our government since the Civil War is some kind of unfair imposition. That a margin of 2 million votes makes him a king, but that Biden's 8 million votes made him a loser. He has planted a bloom of cowardice in the chest of every elected official in this country, so that even the people who answer to Democratic voters say to us that there is nothing that they can do. But they are wrong, because this man is unprecedented, but the tools to deal with him are not. We have been through harder times before, and we have met them. This memorial is a testament to that. And when I say that Donald Trump is disqualified from holding any office defined by this Constitution, and Congress must make that clear, I am not telling them to win. I am telling them to try to fulfill the revolution that the 14th Amendment represents. Trying is what my ancestors did. Trying is what created the amendments. Trying has made all of us here today possible. This is the new birth of liberty Lincoln described in the address etched into these hallowed walls. And so I speak, not only as an American in our modern moment, but with a plea from every generation that has come to cherish this Constitution. Just try. For the nameless dead of Colfax, Louisiana, Vicksburg, Mississippi, Wilmington, North Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and 1,000 other places who cried out for the protection of equality. Just try. For those tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, who built lives for their children and their children with the beauty of birthright citizenship. Just try. For those who took aim at segregation, who demanded an end to Jim Crow, who never wavered from the promise of this country. Just try. to defend against enemies of the Constitution, foreign and domestic. Just try. And because we are Americans, we don't give up, least of all on ourselves. And while this politics refuses to see people like me, the Constitution was not imagined for me. It now belongs to us, me and mine, because we tried and succeeded at making it better. Now it is our turn to try for the ones who come after us, and it starts with standing up for the Constitution and against Donald Trump. Love to the Constitution, love to the Republic, love to the United States, and love and blessings to all of you. Thank you. Let's fight for what we believe in.
We will never give up. We will never concede. We're going to walk down to the Capitol. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong.
The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. If you haven't introduced yourself, here's something of an introduction. Section 3 specifically is about disqualification from office, and it so reads.
No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Meaning,
If someone had sworn an oath to support the Constitution,
like serving this Byrd extension,
and then took part in a rebellion,
like Jan 6,
or helped the enemy,
like giving aid and comfort to J6ers by promising pardon,
they
as in criminal Trump,
are banned from holding positions in the government. Though Congress can remove this ban with a 2/3 vote, which in this case, should members of Congress
even think about to do this, would be a betrayal of their oaths of office.
In the history of humanity, democracy is an extremely rare and fragile and precarious and transitory thing. Abraham Lincoln knew that when he spoke from the battlefield and vowed that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. But he was speaking not long after the republic was created, and he was trying to prove that point, that we would not allow it to perish from the earth. For most of history, the norm has been dictators, autocrats, bullies, despots, tyrants, cowards who take over our governments. For most of the history of the world. And that's why America is such a miracle. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand. as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified.
Check. Okay, and now what we've been waiting for. Thank you, everybody, for holding up your signs. It looks really good on camera. Hope you get a chance to watch it. In 2018, David met Goliath. Jessica Denson launched a lawsuit that toppled Trump's illegal NDA. Jessica is the voice for the small and those who feel voiceless. We have a voice through her. We are here because we don't want to let democracy die on our watch. She showed us, Jessica Denson showed us that what others say is impossible is possible with a fight. Jessica Denson, please come up. Yay, Jessica. Let's say it for Jessica. Jessica, thank you so much for coming up.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out in this below freezing temperature in Washington, D.C. to take your place in history to say, no, democracy is not going to die on my watch, and to demand, absolutely demand peacefully, as we are, that our lawmakers do the same. We will never, never get this moment back. In 2 days, our lawmakers will decide not just the future of this country, but the future of the free world. They have the tools, the legal mechanism, not only the ability, but the obligation to stop an illegal presidency from destroying centuries of sacrifices for freedom. The only question is, do they have the courage? If we pass this unthinkable threshold into fascism, generations will look back to this very moment to see if they did. A lot of people in Washington and around the country today are honoring the memory of President Jimmy Carter, a wonderful, wonderful, heroic, patriotic man and president that he was. In 1979, he said, "The gap between our citizens and our government has never been so wide. The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers. Clear leadership, not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual." Yesterday, after our first day of this historic gathering, 14th Now, it was our day of action, and we went from listening to our wonderful speakers to rallying the members of Congress, the new Congress, the 119th Congress, just hours after they were sworn in, put their hands on a Bible or their book of faith and swore an oath to the Constitution to defend our country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I got to tell you, walking through the halls of Congress, through the Cannon Building and the Russell Senate Building and Dickerson, and it was surreal almost, thinking that we are so close to this unthinkable moment where we may lose it all, seeing all, the men in their nice three-piece, their nice, Capitol suits, and the women in their pretty dresses, and just this sense that you can't, with all the nice clothes and facade and covering in the world, cover the stain that will live on the legacies of these lawmakers, the blood of democracy, if they do not choose the right thing in this moment. Now, we are all here, of course, because of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which makes it abundantly clear in black and white that insurrectionists are not qualified to be president of the United States. Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist. Our nation's preeminent constitutional scholars agree. Lawrence Tribe, Harvard constitutional law scholar, the president of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, who brought the Colorado case up through the Supreme Court, agrees that in spite of the ruling in Trump v. Anderson, Donald Trump remains disqualified. The only thing that judicial train wreck of a ruling did, to quote preeminent scholars William Bowd and Michael Paulson, the only thing that it did was remove Colorado's ability to take Trump off the ballot. It did not in any way take away the ability of Congress or the ability of anyone who has sworn an oath to the Constitution to fulfill that oath by rejecting the certification and or the swearing in of an illegal president under Section 3. And I know there has been a lot of debate. There has been really, honestly, unfortunate headwinds from those in the so-called pro-democracy space trying to make it as though the ruling in Trump v. Anderson excluded the ability for Congress to act barring new legislation. And that is just wrong. As some of our earlier speakers mentioned, all of that reference to Section 5 and new legislation being required was dicta. It was not a mandate. It was not an order. When we have a clearly corrupt and compromised Supreme Court with members on that bench who should not have even been ruling in this case, if they have not given us a decision that forecloses the opportunity to save our democracy, why on earth would we foreclose that opportunity for ourselves? The current circumstance is that Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist, disqualified, and the only mechanism to remove that disability is by a 2/3 vote of both houses. That's it. We don't need new legislation, but we do need each and every member of Congress. And I know there has been a lot of invocation today of Democratic leaders, but I frankly demand all of them who have sworn an oath to the Constitution to uphold that oath and object to the certification of Donald Trump's electors on January 20th. It only takes 1/5 of both houses of Congress. That's only 87 members of the House, which could easily be constituted by the Democrats, and 20 members of the Senate to raise an objection, and a simple majority to sustain it. A simple majority. I want to go back for a minute to the feeling yesterday in those halls of Congress. And it was mixed. We definitely got some pushback, but we also had a lot of receptivity, a lot of understanding of the gravity of this moment, of just how serious a burden is on these lawmakers and how they cannot let us down. And as we were going around, I will tell you, they knew about us. Capitol Hill knows about us. They know that we are here. They know that there are millions of Americans around the country. Maybe not all of them could make it to Washington, D.C. in 30-degree weather, but there is a groundswell movement behind us. There are our ancestors, generations of people who have put their lives on the line for this country and the free world at large. We are not okay with sitting back and not using our founding document, our divinely inspired Constitution, to save it. Are you kidding me? I'll tell you, one of the representatives, or actually now senator, that I ran into yesterday was Adam Schiff. And I've been quoting Senator Schiff a lot recently because I think he said it so perfectly in the first impeachment. He said, to those who chose to acquit Trump, quote, your name will be tied to his with a cord of steel and for all of history. But if you find the courage to stand up to him, to speak the awful truth to his rank falsehood, your place will be among the Davids who took on Goliath. If only you will say, enough. These lawmakers know, every single one of them know. And you know what? I want to talk more about the people I met yesterday because we had receptive conversations not just with Democrats, but with Republicans and Republican staffers. And one of them said to me, as I was telling him about our movement, and I told him, I said, you know, I come from your side. I was a former Republican. I'm a person of faith deeply. God, I am nothing without God. And I related that to him and reminded him of how the person that he works for took an oath to the Constitution. And he didn't really need me to say much to him. He was there with me. He was there with us. And he said, I was there that day. I was there on January 6th. Every single one, most of them anyway. We, of course, have some new ones, but most of them were there on January 6th. They're living a really kind of pathetic and miserable life. I'm talking about the Republicans now having to be these sycophants for this poor, pathetic man who has been lying to himself all his life and just been propped up by all these self-interested power grabbers who have latched on to this caricature of a con man. What a miserable existence to have to be a sycophant to him, to have to undermine the country that you purport to love. And I do believe, in spite of how much I can't stand what they're doing most of the time, I do believe deep, deep inside they love this country. To have to suck up to a character, a sad, really man who really needs a lot of help, criminal, con artist, Russian asset like Donald Trump on a daily basis and pretend that it's in the defense of the greatest country in the world, that city shining on a hill. I'm sure that there's more than a few of Republicans that would like to be free from that bondage, because that's exactly what it is. Another representative that I've been thinking about, and we could go through names, and I don't mind doing that. We played Jamie Raskin. We all adore Representative Raskin so much for his allegiance to the Constitution, his unwavering commitment over these years to call it as he sees it and defend the rule of law. Another one that's come to mind recently is Senator Chris Murphy. He gave an excellent speech, I think about a week and a half ago, from the floor of the Senate, talking about just how quickly and unceremoniously our freedom can be taken away from us, how it can just be gone before we know it. He really laid out the stakes, and I know most of those lawmakers in Capitol Hill understand just how much is on the line right now. And it's on the line because we have a man, as I mentioned, who is a vessel for the most corrupt, dangerous, antagonistic forces to America and freedom that this country has ever seen. They helped him get elected. This is not conspiracy. This is confirmed by the FBI. The Treasury Department sanctioned Iran and Russia just days ago for their interference in this election. We had hundreds of bomb threats on Election Day from Russian servers. This is an anti-American president, which makes sense that someone whose allegiance is not to this country would lead a deadly insurrection to stay in power for his own gain. 4 years ago, Monday, Donald Trump and his duped army of supporters stained the day of January 6th with blood and shame, betrayal and dishonor. His claims of a stolen election were investigated, debunked, and baseless, and he knew that. Yet many lawmakers who were sworn in just yesterday, also in blatant violation of the 14th Amendment, by the way, aided and abetted him. But January 6th does have a legitimate purpose. And we cannot be gaslit into believing that any objection, any legitimate use of January 6th is comparable to what Trump and his duped MAGA army did 4 years ago. You know, this is a really, really important aspect of everything that we're dealing with. We know that the MO of the Republican Party in recent years, probably for way too many, and their allies in Russian media, is projection. Accuse your enemy of the very thing that you do. And so what they did 4 years ago was so stain the day, January 6th, that some may be afraid to ever use that day for its legitimate purpose again. That if we ever do anything on January 6th, we will be called election deniers, or we will be called Stop the Steal 2.0. No, there is a legitimate purpose for January 6th. In fact, because there was an insurrection on January 6th 4 years ago, that is the very reason that we must act now to stop that insurrectionist. We cannot allow the fear of optics to stop the rule of law. And I want to say something. We know that any claims that Donald Trump has a mandate from this election are just hogwash. If you take the results at face value, the percentage of votes is less than 50%, but let me give you a number that's even more representative of the sentiment of the American people. If you take the election results at face value, Donald Trump received votes from less than a third of voting eligible adults. Just last week, there was a Washington Post poll that said that 2/3 of Americans object to the pardon of January 6th insurrectionists. Donald Trump is a January 6th insurrectionist. The sentiment in this country is not for impunity for the crimes against democracy that we have all collectively suffered. This is an injustice and a crime to the American people. What happened yesterday in the sentencing, where this man who committed crimes to get into office the first time will not receive jail time, is the most disgusting injustice and slap in the face to the American electorate. So we are not disrespecting an election by invoking the Constitution. And in fact, the founders and the drafters of Section 3 were well aware that majorities and electorates may elect insurrectionists. And they put this in place in spite of that. This is a backstop. It is a constitutional safeguard, a legal necessity to save our republic even when we do not save ourselves. Far from anti-democratic, enforcement of the 14th Amendment against an insurrectionist is the most democratic position any lawmaker could take. It is not a violation of the peaceful transfer of power. It is in defense of the peaceful transfer of power. Now, in a minute here, I'm going to introduce somebody who was deeply, personally affected by Donald Trump's deadly insurrection 4 years ago. Before I do that, I just want to remind everybody of something that you can't say too many times, and that is that there will come a day that anyone supporting Donald Trump will wake up and learn the hard way just how badly they have been duped and used, just how much their possibly love for freedom, goodwill, faith, like, maybe they just like someone who's a fighter. They don't like, this spinelessness that we frankly see from the Democrats and think they see the opposite on the other side and it's appealing to them. Or they're brainwashed by the Russian propaganda of Fox News like I was for 8 years. And they think they're doing the patriotic thing, but one day they're going to learn the very, very hard way when something affects their lives personally and Donald Trump's interests are going to come first, just how badly they've been used. And nobody learned that more than the supporters of Donald Trump who were sent to their own deaths 4 years ago. These are some names we don't hear so often. We hear Ashley Babbitt. We know her story. We don't hear these other ones so often. Kevin Greason, Roseanne Boylan, crushed to death on the steps of the Capitol, Benjamin Phillips. There was a witness at the January 6th hearing who testified with Jason Van Tatenhove, the ex-oath keeper. His name was Stephen Ayers, and he's a January 6th defendant. Stephen Ayers' co-defendant, Matthew Perna, took his own life as he was awaiting charges for January 6th. Donald Trump is not just an insurrectionist, illegal president-elect. He's also the leader of a death cult who sends his own supporters to their death and turns them into criminals. He turned hundreds of people into criminals 4 years ago. And the worst crimes, some of the worst crimes that were committed, led to the death of some very brave and patriotic people. As a friend of mine, Sergeant Aquilino Gonell, says, it was like a medieval battle on January 6th. A medieval battle. I can't even, we see the images, but to try to put yourself in that place of those officers, those Capitol Police officers and the Metropolitan Police, who did not have the resources to fight this army of people who came with flagpoles to try to beat them to death and storm our nation to keep Donald Trump in power when he knew he had lost an election. How sick is that? These back the blue, these men and women who put their lives on the line and work in that building with those lawmakers, same lawmakers who stood behind Donald Trump and have so conveniently 4 years later forgotten or wanted us to forget just what a betrayal it was. But one of those people, one of those officers, whose name you know well, is Craig Sicknick. And he lost his life after January 6th because of the actions of Donald J. Trump. He was a kind and loving brother and partner and son. He had some dachshunds, some dogs that he loved dearly. Such a kind, kind man. I've gotten to know his brothers, Craig and Ken, over the past year or so. I've had them on my show. And I'm really, really honored today to be joined by Craig Sicknick, who has been so clear in speaking out against the danger that he knows is coming in a second Donald Trump administration. This is not normal. It can be stopped. And we absolutely must demand peacefully that our lawmakers, our Congress, each and every one of them, and for that matter, anyone involved in the swearing in of an illegal, constitutionally disqualified man understands that their legacy will be forever tied to the demise of democracy. Now is the opportunity for them to do the right thing. Please join me in welcoming Craig Sicknick.
Hello, my name is Craig Sicknick. You may have seen me speak at the DNC in Chicago, the VP Harris rally at the Ellipse, which was the same place Trump incited his followers into violence, seen me on television, read about me in the news, or possibly read one of my own published pieces. The reason I'm here today is because I believe Donald Trump is an illegitimate president and should never be allowed to be put into office again. I am the oldest brother of Officer Brian Sicknick of the United States Capitol Police, who was killed in the line of duty due to injuries he received while protecting the Capitol and all within it during Trump's insurrection on January 6th. My brother was not the only one who died as a result of Trump's actions that day. Other officers who were there and died at their own hand later on were Officers Gunther Hashida, Kyle DeFreytag, Howard Liebengood, and Jeffrey Smith, all who took their own lives in days following the attack. No doubt despondent over the ferocity of the attack by fellow citizens, followed by the utter lack of action by those in power to do anything about holding those who engineered and executed the January 6th insurrection responsible for their actions. My brother Brian dedicated his life to serving the public, first as a security police officer in the New Jersey Air National Guard, where he was called to serve in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks on our nation, and later as the United States Capitol Police officer. He always believed in doing the right thing and took his oaths of duty seriously. He was quiet, reserved, and dedicated to his nation, but none of that mattered during the insurrection, where he and his fellow officers were outnumbered by over 50 to 1. We were worried about his safety while he was serving in the Middle East, and were relieved when he returned home to the civilized United States, where he died due to the actions of civilized American citizens. The insurrection was far from the peaceful protest that some Republican members of Congress claimed it to be. While I was thankfully not there, I have spoken to several people who were, none of whom came away from that day unscathed in some manner. Many of the officers who fought that day received career-ending injuries. Some, like Officer Akalina Ganell and Michael Finone, were beaten nearly to death. Others will bear the literal scars from that day for the rest of their lives. The same people who felt the pull to serve our nation by enforcing our laws, keeping the peace, and helping those in need were the same ones whose Trump's crowds turned on. Why? Because Trump told them to. The supposedly law and order MAGA crowd chose to turn on the very people they claim they support that day. After the initial shock of losing my kid brother, only 42 years old when he died, and 10 years my junior, I have been traveling down a long, dark road filled with grief, pain, anger, disgust, and a deep sadness for not only the loss of my brother, but the effect his death had on each of my family members, friends, and my country. I continue to suffer from PTSD, have developed health issues following that fateful day, and I have days where I simply don't want to get out of bed. But in spite of that, I continue to work to support my family, keep my brother's memory alive and his sacrifice, and do what I can to keep morally corrupt people like Trump out of power. Brian's death affected my entire family. My father, now 85, lost a spark that enabled him to go skiing into his early 80s, and which allowed him to remain active until that fateful day when he lost his youngest son due to the violence of January 6th. My mother, whose age I won't reveal as is not polite to divulge, suffered, like myself, with health issues related to the shock of losing Brian, especially in such a violent fashion. My brother Ken, 2 years my junior, decided his escape, so to speak, is to work every hour he can, as work takes his mind off of everything that happened. My wife, who often spoke to Brian, was devastated when she learned of his death, and has had the added burden of supporting the new, not-so-improved me since that time in spite of her own ailments. What keeps us going is the tremendous outreach of many good people from all over the country and the world who have lent their support to my family, many of them strangers, but all of whom were shocked and disgusted by the riot that Trump incited and the deep scar it has left on our nation. My family has received boxes of letters and heartfelt, often handmade gifts from people both home and abroad, expressing their sympathy for our loss and gratitude for Brian's service. We have made some new friends, including members of Congress, along with people from all walks of life who found the insurrection engineered and incited by Trump to be appalling. I am thankful for this outreach and support, as without it, my family would be in an even darker place. Excuse my frozen fingers. Every day, I see Brian's portrait when I come down the stairs of my home, reminding me of his loss and the poor excuse of a man who caused it. I am reminded again every time I speak to my parents, who ever since Brian's death continue to have a tone of sadness in their voice from the death of the youngest son, who should have had many years ahead of him. Before Brian's death, I would have never wanted to stand on a stage such as this, advocating that our elected leaders do what is right instead of protecting those who commit the worst of crimes against our nation. Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, and a long list of others created their own reality and tried to bury the truth after some false attempts to call out Trump for his actions. When push came to shove, those loyal to Trump supported him, knowing that his actions were against every word of their own oaths of office. When the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol was formed to find the root cause of the first violent insurrection in our nation's history since the Civil War, many members of Congress refused to participate and actively blocked any move to find the truth. They decided that a bipartisan committee to find the truth might shine light into the dark recesses of their ranks and expose them for what they are, spineless cowards who put their loyalty to Trump over their oath of office. I have little faith that the same people who worked so hard to prevent an investigation into one of the darkest events in U.S. history will do what is right and block Trump from ascending to power, but I can hope, as can we all. I urge all of you who are listening to contact your congressional representatives and senators and demand them to act to prevent Trump from ever holding power again. Trump is the worst possible person to have as our president. Even his own niece has said that Mr. Trump has no redeeming qualities, not one, but we as a nation refuse to listen. People have short memories and quickly forgot that Trump brought 4 years of complete chaos as a leader and has successfully torn the very fabric of our country apart, not to improve it, as he claimed, but for his own personal gain. His leadership resulted in over 1 million deaths during COVID, with some of the highest mortality rates of any nation. The same leadership also caused the biggest crash in our economy since the Great Depression. But many of us have not forgotten. The chaos Mr. Trump is causing months before he takes office is stunning. His picks for cabinet positions are not based on character, experience, or intelligence. They are based on loyalty to himself. And in many cases, it seems a record of debauchery and questionable moral character helps if you desire such a position. The list is long, but former Congressman Matt Gaetz being chosen as Attorney General is just one example. Our nation, like many others, is not perfect, and differences of opinion abound about how we should move forward. Left, right, and center, until Trump, all worked more or less to strengthen our nation, albeit with differing views on how to do so. In spite of the many differences, we managed to find common ground on issues which benefited far more people than they have harmed. This ability to find compromise gave us the ability to grow stronger and more prosperous as a nation. Trump claims he believes this, but the reality is Mr. Trump only truly believes in one person, himself, as proven over and over again by his actions. The idea of vengeance against anyone who disagrees with him and his calls to rescind the U.S. Constitution if he deems it necessary. The very document he swore an oath to defend when he first took office is the same one he wants to effectively burn, as it limits his potential power, as it was designed to do for all presidents. Mr. Trump broke that oath often through his continuous erosion of our social safety net, calls for loosening any and all regulations that have given us things like overtime pay, clean air, clean water, more affordable health care with no pre-existing condition clauses, and equal rights for those of us who are different in some way. If Trump is given the ability to do so, all of this would go back to a time where people couldn't vote due to the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, or their gender. We must do better. Our founding fathers never envisioned someone as flawed as Trump running for, never mind winning the Oval Office, and did not make provisions to prevent a convicted felon from doing so. They did, however, provide a mechanism to prevent someone like Trump from taking office in the form of Article 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I came here today to urge Congress to do its job and block Mr. Trump from taking office a few short weeks from now. They can do this by upholding their oath of office and acting under Article 3 of the 14th Amendment, which clearly states that no person who is involved in trying to overthrow our government can hold any office, state or federal. Members of Congress had numerous opportunities to act on this, but have failed to do so at every step and continue reneging on their own oath to shield and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign or domestic. Mr. Trump and many of the people who aided him certainly fit the category of domestic enemies of the United States and certainly cannot be trusted to carry out their duties in a proper manner in the next administration. Congress should have impeached Trump after the insurrection, but Mr. McConnell refused to uphold his own oath and made sure that Trump was protected from the repercussions from his treasonous acts, leading up to and during the insurrection. After Mr. McConnell made sure Trump would remain free and unfettered, Judge Cannon made sure that Trump again remained free after another act of treason, that of stealing classified documents from the White House and storing them in the basement at Mar-a-Lago. Unfortunately, that was the end of my speech, the last speech. What I can say is I am still saddened, disheartened, and believe Trump should never be allowed to hold power again. The damage he has caused to our nation, the continuous strife he causes, the utter chaos, division, it's wrong. It should never have taken place. We have had tumultuous times in our country. We have gone through a civil war. We've gone through the civil rights movement, and it has made us better and stronger over time. Thank you. Again, we had the means to prevent Trump from retaking the White House, but I fear that we as a people do not have the will. Prove me wrong. Call your members of Congress now and tell them to do their job and block Trump from ever taking power. They have the tool to do so using the 14th Amendment of our Constitution, the very document our nation was founded on and which Mr. Trump wants to do away with. Keep up the peaceful fight against the worst possible person to ever hold office in the history of our nation. And remember that your own actions will have consequences for your family and friends. Do not sit idly by while Trump enacts his unethical, immoral, and unconstitutional plans during a second term in office. And everybody have some safe travels and get home safely tonight on this cold, bitter cold evening.
Thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around in this freezing weather. You guys are absolute champions. Everybody watching this needs to know what champions these people are for being here today. Everybody that showed up today and yesterday and will join us tomorrow. It is truly bitter cold out here, so thank you so much. And thank you to all of our speakers, to Craig, to Kaitlin. I want to thank our speakers from yesterday, Andrea Chalupa, Mark Graber, Clifton Cash, who has been amazing out there promoting the heck out of 14th Now all over social media. Thank you so much, Cliff. We miss you today. I want to thank everybody that showed up here today. You are patriots in the truest sense. You are putting yourselves on the line for democracy the way that generations have showed us to demonstrate peacefully, to stand up for our country. Thank you so much. You will never be forgotten. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our amazing volunteers. Thank you to all of our organizers. You know who you are. You are so loved and appreciated by millions of Americans out there. Millions of Americans are behind this movement. So I want to thank all of you. On behalf of everybody at 14th Now, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we are going to do this. We're going to be back here tomorrow, whether you like it or not. We'll be here with our hand warmers. We'll be here with our signs because it is the last day before January 6th. This is it. This is it. We can brave the cold. Please, everybody, go to nowmarch.org. Nowmarch.org. Go to the Day of Action page. There are instructions you can still use. Pick up those phones on Monday morning. Call your senator. Call your representative. Demand that they uphold their oath to the Constitution and object to the certification of Donald J. Trump. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless this beautiful country.